Okay, good morning, nerds. This is the latest installment of Unity Gameplay Basics. Our tutorial today is going to be covering random numbers. We're going to start off with getting some random integers. We'll move into some random floats, and then we'll also show how we can use the random class to get other things like colors, position within a circle, etc. This is going to be one of the shortest tutorials we run. I can't see this one taking too long because the concept is really pretty simple. It's going to be more application than anything on this one. So, the first thing that we're going to do is I am starting out with my little project here, but honestly, this tutorial is really lightweight. You could start this with pretty much any sprite. And if you needed to know how to do that, you can check out some of my earlier tutorials. But basically, any sprite with a behavior attached to it. I still have over here, whoops, where'd it go? I still have my player controller that we've been kind of tinkering on for the last several tutorials, and I'm just going to continue off using that. But you could start with a brand new one, and really you don't need any of these extra variables or anything. You could pretty much just start from scratch with a brand new one, and you would be totally fine. So we're not going to build on anything that we've done in previous tutorials, including stuff like this run audio, shoot, speed, etc. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to access that script that's already on there, which again, in my case, is player controller. It can be whatever you want. It's not too bad. And again, we've got a lot of stuff in this script, and none of it is really applicable to this particular tutorial. We're going to ignore basically everything here. The key call out here, especially if you've got a brand new script, is we're going to be working inside the update function, which is usually where we do most of our heavy lifting. And I'm just going to pick a spot. I've already got all this other movement code here from previous tutorials. Again, if you don't have any of it, it isn't going to matter. But if you have been following along previously, what you want to do is you just want to make sure that you're still inside update after all of the other stuff that we've done here. So I'm going to just kind of start off right here. And again, if you only are just working inside of update, that is totally fine. Because again, nothing that we do here is building on anything previously. And because I've already used some of these other buttons, such as Fire 1, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it when you trigger the jump button, which in Unity default is the spacebar. We're going to make our character teleport around the screen a little bit. Okay, and to test out where I want to go, what I did to start with is I made sure I can see my transform node here. And what I did was I just kind of drug her off to the left, and I drug her off to the right, and you can see that we're getting ranges somewhere between -7.5 and +7.5. And so I'm just going to leave her kind of in that broad category. And then I moved her down a little bit into the negative, but it doesn't really, her position doesn't really matter. What I'm trying to do is just make it obvious when we change things later. So, but I did need to get my ranges. So the fact that I'm -7.5 and +7.5, again, looking at that X value right here, is kind of important for me. If your ranges are different, what I would suggest is that you use those other values, and they should mirror. So for example, it might be -5 and 5, it might be -3 and 3, it might be -10 and 10. Just whatever your values are, use those. Otherwise, you might not get the same visible result as me, but it'll still work. Okay, so I know I want to use -7.5. And I moved her down a little bit. She's at -7.5y, mostly because I'm going to put her up here a little, and I just want to notice when she teleports up. That'll help me validate that I'm doing things right. So I'm just kind of helping set myself up. And this blue bar for this tutorial, we aren't even going to use. So if you don't have one, don't worry about it. We're just working with our one single sprite here. Okay, so back to our code. Again, I'm inside the update function. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and add, let's see here, we're going to basically copy almost the exact same code we used up here, but we're going to do if input dot get button down, and again we're going to use the jump, and that does need a capital J or it won't work. We're going to use the jump button. which again in Unity does map to the spacebar. Um, if that happens, what we're going to do is we're just going to directly attack our transform, and we're just going to physically move her somewhere else. So we're going to do transform.position equals, and since all transform positions are vector 3s, we're going to do a new vector 3. And what I want to do is set her X position to something inside that range. So for now, and we're going to change this really quick, we're going to just put an X in because I want to think about the rest of this line of code first. Okay, so we're going to put her somewhere randomly in the X position. And we're going to represent that by an X variable. Note the red line underneath of it. It is an error. We are going to fix it momentarily. That's just a placeholder for me while I'm thinking about this. And then we're going to position her Y at 2.0. Actually, we can just do a 2 there. That's fine. But we're going to position her at Y2. And then our Z value of that is going to be 0. So that gives us mostly good code. The one catch here is this X value, which again, I want to be a random number. Fortunately for us, Unity has a very easy random function. And the really cool thing about Unity's random function, actually it's a random class. The really neat thing about the random class is that as a static class, it is shared by all instances, or every object in Unity is going to use that exact same instance, which would be the static instance or the singleton, depending on how you want to phrase that, of the random class, which also means that you won't have some of the things you used to see back in the C++, excuse me, C++, C# era, where you would have RNGs that synchronized. The static class means that it won't synchronize like that, which is a good thing, because it won't create weird values and value echoes and some of the streakiness that used to come with those. So what we're going to do here is we're going to invoke that random class. We're going to do random dot, and the current one that we're going to use is random dot range. And the nice thing is you can put two numbers in here, and it is going to grab a number between those two numbers. So we're going to do -7. We're just going to do -7 for now, and +7. And you're going to notice that this is int max exclusive, which means it won't ever actually hit 7. And if we were doing something like randomizing with dice or something, that might be a big deal. But what you're going to notice is she's never going to hit the true outside of the outside edge of the screen. She'll get kind of close, but she might hit the left side. For this particular issue, since we do have an inclusive and an exclusive, for this one, I am going to go ahead and just bump this up to 8, and that will allow it to hit the number 7. So we are really getting from -7 to 7, and in this particular application, that's going to be okay. We'll tweak that around for the next run, but this is going to be good for us right now. Okay, so now that we've got our ranges set, we're going to go ahead and save, and then I'm going to go ahead and run this. And really, that's all there is to it. She should just be working now. So as soon as it runs, there we go. As soon as we're able to run this, I'm going to go ahead and try to run it. Come on. Whoops, accidentally unran it. Okay, let's try this one more time. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and run it. It's really trying. There we go. And as I hit the space bar, what you're going to notice is she did pop up to that y equals 2, and we can see that here. And if we pay attention, I've got her selected here. If we pay attention to those x values, I'm going to click into the blue here, but I'm really watching these x values. Whoops, I guess I'm not going to click in the blue there. And she does still have the shoot sound effect from a couple tutorials ago. But every time I hit the space bar, she's basically popping to a different location. And we should be able to hit anything in that range, again, of -7 through +7 because as an exclusive we put in 8 and that'll give us a range up to 7. So that's looking pretty good. We basically have this working and she's getting those random positions all we want. But what if I want it a little bit more fine-tuned than that? Obviously there's a pretty big gap here. If I just manually set her to 0, the gap between 1 and 0 is pretty big. So what if I want to fill in some of that gap? Obviously, I can look at, I can do, if I just type her in, I can do a 0.5 or even a 0.578231. I'm just randomly typing in numbers while saying other numbers, so that won't necessarily match. But I can basically get really fine-tuned here. And she'll move, but my random values aren't allowing that. The nice thing here is the random range function actually has two overloads. If I delete these parentheses here and I put the parentheses back, we can actually look at these overloads. You can see that the overload 1 is actually looking for 2 floats. Overload 2 is looking for 2 ints, and we used the int version last time by giving it 2 ints as parameters, but we could just as easily have done 2 floats. And the thing I'm going to call out there is that's a min inclusive and a max inclusive, so it'll go up to exactly what we type in, which is a little nicer than what it was for the integers. So what I'm going to do here is get a little more specific than I was last time. I'm going to go -7.5 f because we need a float, and then I'm going to do +7.5 f. And that's my new range. Because I put in floats, it's going to be using the float versions of this function rather than the int version of this function. So when I save, so I just saved, and we're going to try this one more time. And again, I've got her highlighted, and we're looking here at her X position. I guess she's not highlighted, but we'll fix that in a second. Okay, and so now, whoops, okay, sorry about that click, but anyways, okay, so now every time I click in and move around, you're going to notice that these values remain floats, and they are floats every single time we move around. And so it's giving us a little bit more precision and a little bit more fine-tuning in our randoms. We might want that, we might not. So there's some cool tricks that you can do with random, easy ways to generate random numbers. The other couple callouts I want to make, and this is only going to take just a couple more minutes here, we're basically done with the main part of that tutorial, but some other tools I would like to note. The random function itself has a lot of cool other abilities. For example, we could do int dice roll equals random dot range of 1,7. Remember again that since it is exclusive, this is going to give me a 6-sided dice. So there's one thing that we could do with it. Again, we'd want to do something with that value, but there we go. A lot of times, and this is to preserve some backwards compatibility, a lot of people have asked me in my classes, why does it work like this? And that's because back in the day, you would have done something like this, and then you would have just added +1. And this is basically being upheld to maintain backwards compatibility, I think, is my assumption. But this would give me, this is another way of getting that 6-sided value. It'll roll a number between 0 and 5. We add 1 to it, and that's going to give us our 1 through 6. The other thing that we can do, if we look at the random dot, if we just look at the random class, what else does it give us? The color HSV function is going to give us, you can see here it generates a random color from HSV and alpha ranges, which is really nice for giving us a random color. So we could randomly maybe tint the background different colors or things like that. We also have inside unit circle, which will give us, again, a random point inside a circle or on a circle with a radius of 1.0. That's good for establishing random vectors and random other things. And then you can normalize that value to get an edge value if you want to. Inside unit sphere is the exact same thing, only it gives you a three-dimensional vector. You can see that that's going to return a vector 3. So that one is very, very handy, again, for getting a point inside. And just like the unit circle, you could normalize that and get a value that's on the edge of the sphere. But they also simplified that and just gave you an on-unit sphere function that does that as well. So that gives you a random spot. Again, so those three are useful for circles. Random range is deprecated. You shouldn't use that one. It basically does the exact same stuff as range. Again, that one's there for backwards compatibility, but any version of Unity now, they will probably get rid of that, so it's not considered a safe function to use anymore. Random rotation is going to give you a random quaternion, so your thing will face a random direction, which may be helpful depending on what you're working on. And then random value gives you a random float between 0 and 1, which is useful for a lot of random. That's most analogous to some of the previous random number functions that existed in some of the other languages. For example, the C++ random function will do this exact same thing. So if you've been using that function and your code is more compatible and you're trying to port your code, that's a really good one to use. The rest of these are probably not terribly helpful to an everyday programmer. So I'm not going to go through those in any kind of detail, but it's just kind of nice to know what exists inside of that random class. So that's about it for this tutorial. That was a nice short one. I think we're in under like 15 minutes probably. And so as always, oh wait, we're at 16:41, so slightly off. But anyways, that's a nice short one for a change. So, as always, in closing, if this helped you or you found it useful, please like and subscribe. That's really helpful. And as always, in closing, keep on creating. Have a great day, nerds.